They say you never forget the day your family's legacy gets bulldozed by a stranger in designer boots. But trust me, it hits different when you walk up your driveway after your own daughter's wedding, still humming the tune from the father-daughter dance, and you catch the scent of diesel hanging thick in the air. That's how I found out 80 years of hand-cut limestone, blood, sweat, and calluses that carried my family's name was now just rubble and muddy chaos, courtesy of some California transplant with a taste for champagne and the power to tape a $12,000 bill to my mailbox like it was just another HOA newsletter. Yeah, that happened. And no, I'm not making any of this up. The woman's name was Cordelia Blackthorne, if you can believe it, and she stood on her deck glass raised, watching raw creek water flood her own subdivision storm drains as if she was toasting the end of an era she never understood. And that HOA notice, infrastructure fees for a dam, my great-grandfather Jeremiah built in 1943 when infrastructure meant a couple of stubborn men dynamite and the will to keep their neighbors safe from spring floods. Here's what they don't teach you in HOA president school: water always wins, especially when you pick a fight with a retired Army Corps engineer who spent a lifetime making sure of it. But let me back up a sec. Maybe you're watching from somewhere that doesn't have HOA presidents who think they invented the creek that runs through your backyard. My name's Ezekiel Ironwood Zeke if you're family or you've earned it. My roots run 3 generations deep on this patch of Missouri, 15 acres my grandfather carved out, back when the land was more wild than tame, and folks solved problems with calloused hands, not legal threats. That damn no mortar, just precisely set limestone worn smooth by decades of controlled water, was more than a structure. It was a promise. I was raised on its banks, taught to listen to the bullfrogs, smell the wet mint and limestone in spring, feel the stories in every stone. I got my stubborn streak and a few scars from Grandpa Jeremiah. After 3 tours and a medical retirement, I came home to that same farmhouse, watch my daughter Autumn grow up, where the trees filter afternoon sun like stained glass. Then the developers came and everything changed. Willowbrook Estates popped up in '95, one rustic subdivision after another, cookie-cutter houses for folks who thought you could buy a piece of country living at Pottery Barn. Our creek became their water feature, and our dam, the one holding back floodwater, suddenly became an eyesore, according to the right kind of neighbor. You know the type. Every neighborhood's got a queen bee, but ours showed up with a Tesla, a California license, and the social grace of a hornet with a clipboard. Cordelia Blackthorne, city planning assistant turned HOA president 3 terms, running future migraine in yoga pants. First thing she did was show up on my porch in jeans that probably cost more than my monthly disability check, talking about integrating my property with community standards, like my land was a Windows update that needed to be patched. I tried to meet her halfway: regular inspections, small repairs, whatever would keep the peace. But Cordelia had that look the kind folks get when they've decided you're the nail and they're holding the hammer. She filed an anonymous complaint with Child Services right in the middle of Autumn's wedding planning, saying my place was unsafe for kids. Yes, she went there. That's when I realized this wasn't about safety or even the dam. It was about power. She'd declared war and picked the wrong soldier. 3 weeks later, the real legal bombs started dropping. Certified letter, $12,000 in retroactive infrastructure fees. The explanation: my dam was negatively impacting downstream water management and needed immediate remediation assessment. If you've ever had your life rewritten in legalese, you know that kind of gall is almost impressive. It was like blaming the lighthouse for the rocks. Pay in 30 days or remediation crews would show up. Translation: we'll destroy your family's history with a bulldozer and a smile. But, see, I'm a retired engineer and a paranoid one at that. I looked up their so-called expert, Brantley Blackthorne, yep, same last name, who turned out to be unlicensed in Missouri. That gave me leverage, and I used it, filed complaints, demanded transparency, and aired it all out at the next HOA meeting right in front of 63 residents who suddenly realized they'd been funding a one-woman crusade. Cordelia tried damage control, passive-aggressive emails, secret meetings, but the word was out. That's when the neighbors started showing up. Dalton Greystone, the retired teacher, asking why he was paying emergency assessments for lawsuits nobody approved. Savannah Riverside, a widow on fixed income waiving invoices she never understood. The old guard smelled a rat, and the new folks clung to their property values like life preservers. Social media turned ugly rumors about unstable veterans and dangerous infrastructure. But for every fake account spewing nonsense, there were two more neighbors waking up. And just as Cordelia thought she'd cornered me in came Peyton and Associates, a law firm, with all the subtlety of a freight train demanding liability insurance or immediate dam removal. Daily certified letters. County inspectors at Sunrise local paper getting concerned citizen letters. But as I sifted through the legal mess, I found her fatal mistake. Cordelia was using HOA emergency assessments to pay for all this, not her own money. My neighbors, including the ones she claimed to protect, were footing the bill to destroy my legacy. So I lawyered up. Marlowe Chin, an environmental attorney with a grudge against HOA bullies, freedom of information requests, sunshine law violations, itemized breakdowns. Turned out the HOA never had authority over pre-existing properties like mine. Cordelia's orders were as worthless as a $3 bill. My kitchen turned into a war room, coffee and paperwork spread across the table, neighbors gathering to strategize. We called ourselves concerned residents, really. We were just tired of being conned. Cordelia, getting desperate, issued a 48-hour demolition notice timed for Autumn's wedding weekend, when she figured I'd be too busy to fight back. She miscalculated. The morning of the wedding, before sunrise, I heard diesel engines saw a demolition crew lined up around my grandfather's dam like vultures. Cordelia, in her boots clipboard, raised shouting about emergency safety. But her paperwork was fake, expired permits, inspection dates that didn't match. I called out to the crowd, wedding guests, neighbors, retired Judge Whitfield and Father Benedict Stone among them, telling everyone to record what was happening. They demolished the dam anyway. 2 hours, 80 years of family history wiped out muddy water. Rushing wild, my daughter's white dress stained before she could say I do. But Cordelia's arrogance inviting 150 witnesses was her undoing. Local news ran the story by evening. Social media exploded. And the real kicker, flooding from the destroyed dam sent wind-blown HOA documents, financial records scattering right onto my property like the universe was tired of her secrets. What those soggy papers showed, I'll never forget. Negative $847,000 balance, fake landscaping companies, $200,000 for work that never happened. Cordelia had been stealing from everyone, shell companies, forged invoices, offshore transfers. And my dam, just a distraction, a scapegoat to trigger insurance payouts and cover her tracks. Our coalition moved fast. FBI contacts through Judge Whitfield, environmental law, through Marlowe financial audits, asset freezes. Preston Ashworth, the former board member, had kept copies of everything. Father Benedict rallied the community, neighbors became investigators. Dalton on meeting minutes, Savannah tracking every odd expense. We turned the HOA's own weapons against them. Cordelia spiraled, broke into my property at 2 a.m., tripped over my garden hose, got it on camera by the way, started slinging accusations on social media, anonymous complaints to the VA, even tried to challenge Autumn's marriage license. Then she hired a private investigator who turned out to be FBI agent Roland Grimm. You can't make this stuff up. The final act played out like something from a bad sitcom. Cordelia called a community safety meeting in the flood-damaged rec center flyers about extremist elements, while off-duty cops, actually undercover feds, sat in the audience. My coalition in the front row, cameras rolling. Cordelia strutted in, gave a speech about dangerous veterans and property values, then confessed on record to ordering the demolition. I stood up, documents in hand, read out the theft and fraud in front of everyone. Cue the feds. Agent Grimm stepped forward, badge out, arrested her for wire fraud, embezzlement, insurance fraud, the whole book. The crowd erupted, some cheering, some in tears, a few kids asking why the mean lady was crying as she was led away in cuffs. By the next morning, the story was viral. The HOA board dissolved, community members voted to take control, transparency, no more dictators with a checkbook. Cordelia pled guilty, 5 years in federal prison, total asset forfeiture, over $2 million recovered. My settlement was substantial, but rebuilding the dam meant more than any payout. The whole community pitched in, restored the dam, built trails, fish ladders, environmental signs. Autumn and her husband moved into the old farmhouse, started their family. We set up a Veterans Foundation using restitution money, turned that HOA disaster into a blueprint for fighting corruption. Missouri passed new laws. FBI created a task force. Judge Whitfield led workshops. Marlo Chen became a legend. I wish I could say it brought back everything we lost, but sometimes the best revenge isn't getting, even it's building something better. We turned the ruins into something worth passing on. My grandfather's dam lives on, the creek flows clear, and our neighborhood stands as proof that justice, when you fight for it, can wash away the worst of what people try to do to each other. So what about you? Ever gone up against a corrupt HOA, a petty official, or a neighbor on a power trip? Drop your story in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. You never know who you'll help by sharing. And if you want more stories about regular folks taking on broken systems, stick around next week. I'll tell you how a farmer turned a city council's land grab into a statewide corruption scandal. Because water always finds its way, and sometimes justice flows with it.